My main message is to the parents of Trayvon Martin. You know, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. And, you know, I think they are right to expect that all of us as Americans are going to take this with the seriousness it deserves, and that we're going to get to the bottom of exactly what happened.
Let me explain to you a little bit of what's at stake here. This is a major moment in American history, and America's reaching a bit of a boiling point in terms of dealing with this issue. And when we allow misinformation and obfuscation and people to be confused about the truth about what's going on, then we become part of the problem and not part of seeking a solution.
Sanford Police Department, line is being recorded. Sean.
Hey, we've had some break-ins in my neighborhood, and there's a real suspicious guy. This guy looks like he's up to no good, or he's on drugs or something.
Did you see what he was wearing?
Yeah, a dark hoodie, like a gray hoodie, and either jeans or sweatpants and white tennis shoes. Yeah, now he's coming towards me.
Okay.
He's got his hand in his waistband. And he's a black male.
Are you following him?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need you to do that.
There have been other incidents where George Zimmerman has been accused of
calling the cops 46 times since January 1st of 2011.
Now, Martin, remember, was on the way back to his dad's fiance's condo to watch the NBA All-Star game. He wasn't armed. He was carrying a bag of Skittles and an iced tea. He was wearing jeans, white tennis sneakers, and a hoodie. One of the things when I heard that 911 tape that immediately got my attention is one of the earliest things Mr. Zimmerman said. He says, "This guy looks like he's up to no good or on drugs or something. He's a black male. Something's wrong with him. He's coming to check me out." So the idea that there was something that Mr. Zimmerman thought there was something suspicious about your son was wearing white sneakers, jeans, and a hoodie, which I got to tell you, I wear that every single day of my life when I'm not on camera, and I don't think anybody, even if they didn't recognize me, would have said, well, I look suspicious, and I was wearing the exact same, I wear the exact same thing your son was wearing. To you, is that just a question, is that just a matter of race?
No justice. Zimmerman is a racist, a child killer. Florida tolerates it. He a wannabe cop, I swear. He dialed 911 46 times in the past 8 years. 6 since last year. To no avail, won't never recall he complained about a black male. Trayvon was buying iced tea and some Skittles. Zimmerman chased him to his death with a pistol. How can you scream self-defense when you had nothing to defend yourself against?
Under Florida's lethal force law, Zimmerman could have stayed where he was, stood his ground, and as long as he reasonably believed that his life was in danger, fired in self-defense. But as you heard there, he apparently did neither. He apparently followed Trayvon Martin, and about 100 yards away from where Trayvon was going to meet his dad, confronted him. The moment is captured in another 911 call, this one from a neighbor who hears shouting outside.
Dispatcher told him not to follow. He pursued with a 9mm and called him a fucking coon. A coon is short for raccoon. In the slavery days, that's what they call black dudes.
You are among those of us who agree that George Zimmerman said coon on the tape. I saw you try to push him on that issue. He obfuscated and allowed those who want to believe that he didn't say coon, which is rather clear to many of us. You allowed him to sort of prevaricate and say, well, maybe it wasn't, and maybe it's a different word.
And in fact, I spoke with my teenage daughter yesterday, and the word in question, I mean, it's the difference between a C and a G, from what I understand. And goon is apparently a term of endearment in the high schools these days. I don't know of anyone younger than 40 who uses coon as a racial epithet.
Whoever don't help is guilty. Why? Cause he cried for help. His last words was help me.
Okay. And is it a male or female?
It sounds like a male.
And you don't know why?
I don't know why. I think they're yelling help, but I don't know. Just send someone quick. Say stop.
Okay. Does he look hurt to you?
I can't see him. I don't want to go out there. I don't know what's going on. So they're sending him.
So you think he's yelling help?
Yes.
All right. What is your...
Just, there's gunshots.
You just heard gunshots?
Yes.
How many?
This one. He said he shot him. Yes, the person is dead, laying on the grass.
Just because he's laying on
the ground. Oh, my God.
Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God is gonna trouble these waters. In Florida, they got a law called Stand Your Ground, which put a 17-year-old young man in the ground. Geraldo said black kids shouldn't wear hoodies. Compared a hoodie to a killer. How could he?
You have said this is a case of self-defense.
Yes.
Now, for a lot of people, that strains credulity. A lot of people have said, look, you hear on the 911 tapes the operator saying to George, do not pursue, and yet he does anyway. And we know that we have a 17-year-old kid here who is carrying candy and iced tea, who's on the phone with his girlfriend, not an optimal position from which to threaten the life of a grown man who's carrying a gun. How is that self-defense?
Well, I don't think we've heard all the evidence. I don't want to litigate this case in the media.
Now, according to the Orlando Sentinel, Zimmerman told police that Trayvon climbed on top of him and slammed his head into the sidewalk several times, leaving him bloodied and battered and with a broken nose. And his lawyer says that only one side of the story is being reported.
I think when the evidence comes out, it will show that George Zimmerman was acting in self-defense in this case. And when the rest of the evidence comes out, the one fact we do know, and that I can disclose at this point, is that George Zimmerman suffered a broken nose, injuries to the back of his head, and signs of a scuffle, being grass stain on the back of his shirt.
The Trayvon Martin story has taken an ugly turn in the conservative media. Sean Hannity and Geraldo Rivera are desperately throwing out hypothetical excuses for the killer.
I believe that George Zimmerman, the overzealous neighborhood watch captain, should be investigated to the fullest extent of the law, and if he is criminally liable, he should be prosecuted. But I am urging the parents of black and Latino youngsters particularly to not let their children go out wearing hoodies. I think the hoodie is as much responsible for Trayvon Martin's death as George Zimmerman. Juliet, when you see a kid walking down the street, particularly a dark-skinned kid like my son Cruz, who I constantly yelled at when he was going out wearing a damn hoodie or those pants around his ankles, take that hood off. People look at you and what do they think? What's the instant identification? What's the instant association? It's those crime scene surveillance tapes. Every time you see someone sticking up a 7-Eleven, the kid's wearing a hoodie. Every time you see a mugging on a surveillance camera, or they get the old lady in the alcove, it's a kid wearing. You have to recognize that this whole stylizing yourself as a gangster, you're going to be a gangster wannabe, well, people are going to perceive you as a menace. That's what happens. It is an instant reflexive. Trayvon Martin's, God bless him, he's an innocent kid, a wonderful kid, a box of Skittles in his hand. He didn't deserve to die, but I'll bet you money, if he didn't have that hoodie on, that nutty neighborhood watch guy wouldn't have responded in that violent and...
Sean Bell ain't wear a hoodie and they still shot him. Diallo ain't wear a hoodie and they still shot him. What's wrong with Geraldo's brain?
And Geraldo Rivera, well, there's nobody better than that. His take was so far off the mark, his own son objected. Rivera tweeted, "My own son just wrote to say he's ashamed of my position on hoodies. I still feel parents must do whatever they can to keep their kids safe." In an effort to create a unique take on the Trayvon Martin case, Geraldo Rivera has made a ridiculous comment. He's handing George Zimmerman an absurd defense. To offer up the idea that Trayvon Martin was killed because of the clothes that he was wearing is absolutely outrageous. But there's more. Here's what Sean Hannity said about the case.
Could this be a terrible tragedy? Could this just be, a case where Trayvon was running because he thought he was in jeopardy? He was in the neighborhood. It was and that we had a series of crimes. So we have a community watch. Is it possible that it was just a horrible accident?
It could be. I mean, Sean, certainly the defense is going to come forward and say that it's a tragedy. Obviously, he misunderstood. Zimmerman thought that he was in fear of his life.
I mean, this is a tragedy. This young man. We just don't know if it was an accident or if this was somehow intentional. We don't know.
We do know that he wasn't doing anything wrong.
We do know that. We know he had no weapons. He had Skittles and a phone.
Hannity says that we don't know if it was an accident or if it was intentional.
The Ku Klux Klan wear hoods and nobody complains. Let them keep killing our kids, we have no future. Vigilante shooters, they say since it happened, Skittles made money in stock. My applause, I hope they donate some of that money to the cause. Obama stepped up, so did Al Sharpton. R.I.P. Trayvon Martin. Police Chief Bill Lee justified the murder, then he stepped down from his position. No more further.
Is this an example of it being in the talk culture for more than a week, a very intense subject, and here comes a talker trying to come up with a different take and steps in it?
Well, it's not only that, Ed. It's the fact that they were slow on the uptake to begin with.
Fox was.
Fox was. They were not addressing this in a serious way, and then begrudgingly, they've acknowledged that something egregious has happened here, and so now they're trying to come up with an excuse. And the horrible thing about this is that they're coming up with all kinds of excuses because they still disbelieve the fact that this kid could be innocent.
All right, I want to play. This is the president today. It's gotten into presidential politics now. The president was announcing the head of the World Bank today, the candidate for that, and of course he was asked a question about it. Here's his response.
I think all of us have to do some soul searching to figure out how does something like this happen. And that means that we examine the laws and the context for what happened, as well as the specifics of the incident. But my main message is to the parents of Trayvon Martin. You know, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon.
That, of course, drew a reaction from one of the Republican candidates, Newt Gingrich.
What the president said, in a sense, is disgraceful. It's not a question of who that young man looked like. At some point, we've got to talk about being Americans, and we've got to talk about when things go wrong to an American, it is sad for all Americans. And trying to turn it into a racial issue is fundamentally wrong.
Yeah.
I really find it appalling.
Ta-Nehisi, what do you think?
Well, I think the implicit message that Newt Gingrich is sending is that because it's a racial issue, it's therefore not for all Americans. I don't understand that at all. I think all Americans should be concerned about racial issues. What the president said is obviously true. If you listen to the tape, George Zimmerman cited him as a young African-American. If you look at the reporting that's been done going up to over the past 3 weeks,
A person, however, is screaming, there's a gunshot, and there is no more screaming. That sounds to me pretty damning, and it reminds me of the face of Emmett Till bashed in the coffin, where we see here's evidence of a black body being destroyed wrongfully, innocently, and the justice system, of course, not coming to his aid.